What is up, Scrub fam? I am here with a video. We're taking a step back from a format analysis, and this is something that I promised once I reached 200 subs on my Patreon. And what I did is I promised that I would do a series basically on people that are basically getting into the game that are newer and want to learn about some key parts of the game. And so this video, I'm going to be starting with something that is one of the most important things that you do, and this is before you actually start playing the game. This is something that takes place as the game before the game, and it is what allows you to essentially even start. And so I'm going to be going over deck building today. This is going to be a pretty high-level overview. I will get into some detailed stuff, but in general, this is going to be some basics around how you should look into building your decks if you're just getting into the game, and then how you should be trying to, at the same time, kind of look at the results of what's happening and start getting your mind wrapped around that as you're building your decks. Because I think one of the big opportunities that people have in this game is, number one, goal setting for themselves. So if you don't have a goal for yourself, so if you just want to play this game casually, like this video, you can take some of the stuff from it, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff in that video that really focuses on being competitive. So if you're looking to be more casual, you can apply a lot of these rules, but at the same time, just remember that is for the competitive person. So making sure that your goals are aligned. So if you're a person that wants to be really competitive, then you're going to be paying attention to different things. Where if you're a person that wants to be casual, you're going to be looking to do things that are more fun, more different interactions that are kind of cool to you, or maybe you want to play your favorite character. But in general, make sure that your goals are properly aligned. Before I get started in this video, let me give a shout out to my sponsor, Beard Collectibles. Al Pastrana is the best shop on the planet. If you haven't bought your World Martial Arts Tournament product yet, it is spicy. The set is highly underrated as of right now, and I think people are starting to learn the power level of this set. So go ahead and get your sealed product now while it's still cheap. And then the value of boxes is actually pretty amazing. Pull rates are really strong. You're going to be able to get your money's worth, so I highly recommend buying sealed product. I bought 5 boxes, and that was more than enough to get me everything I needed for the set, so that was pretty awesome. So, alright, so let's get started into the first thing you need to do when you're talking about building a deck. And so this is something that if you wanted to tune a deck, or you want to, you net deck something, or if you want to build a brand new deck entirely, there are a lot of things they have to take into account. And so this first topic that we're going to go over, like I said, is going to be for people that are competitive, or even if you're casual, because a lot of these rules apply to you if you want to be able to take this deck to a local and actually have some success, and that is format awareness. So when we're talking about the format is essentially the types of decks that are being played, the decks that are going to be the strongest decks in the game, and the decks that kind of create the different rules that everyone else has to abide by, as well as in general, just like what are the things that are the absolute best that you can be doing within a given format and that provide the best success. So it's also how it's pretty much how you start the baseline of what your deck's going to be looking like. So the first thing on format awareness is determining what the wall is. So I use the wall pretty much as just, it is that. You're really going to be throwing a lot of your ideas at the wall itself to see what's going to stick. And right now, I think the wall, you're kind of placed between 2 different buckets. You basically have Cell Chain on one end and Chain Zen on the other, and then you have a lot of decks that are in between. But those two are kind of like the wall. If you can't get past those two types of strategies, then the viability of the deck that you're trying to play is diminished because of the fact that you can't get past the wall, so to speak. So that's why those decks are called the wall right now. The next thing is, different rules of the format. So threats must be energy efficient. So the reason why you want to have threats that are energy efficient. So when I say energy efficient, this means set that you can play for 1 energy, 2 energy, 3 energy, something that gives you a reward for playing it. So like something like Preface of Recovery Son Goku, how it allows you to untap 2 energy when you play it. Or just a card that it just allows you to draw a card off of it and provide a meaningful effect. So like Awe-Inspiring SS Blue Vegito. That card gives you something, it's paying you, and it's also energy efficient. So it's something that's costing you, a relatively cheap cost. So 1, 2, 3, 4 energy, and it's paying you at the same time. And then the reason why you want to focus on energy efficient threats is because you want to create tempo. And so tempo is something that really focuses on using and getting the most out of your energy on a given turn. And in Super, that's a unique thing, because in Super you can actually have offensive and defensive tempo, similar to like how you have control decks or mid-range decks in Magic, where you need to kind of leave up some number of energy to be able to play your removal spell the same exact turn when it's necessary. You have to do the same thing in Super because of the fact that, negates are a way you defend your life, or Sensu Beans or 10k combo cards are the way you defend your life. So you need to make sure that on your turn, you're playing an energy efficient threat that's allowing you to put something on the board, or multiple things on the board, and at the same time, when you pass turn, you need to make sure that you have energy available to you to be able to defend your life total, because there are a lot of high power threats, especially as you get to the 3rd, 4th turn of the game. They're going to be able to come down and present either a wide threat or a larger threat you're going to have to deal with, and you're going to need to have that energy open to be able to defend yourself. So you need to be able to focus on threats that are energy efficient so you can maintain tempo both offensively and defensively. And the next rule is wide is better than tall. So when I mean that, that means the more threats you can present is often, if not always, going to be better than the size of the threats that you play. So for instance, let's think into account of stuff that you can play for 2 to 3 energy. So say in Teamwork Kaba. Say in Teamwork Kaba, providing that body, the 4-drop Caulifla, and then the 2-drop Sister Attack Hail is way better than just playing a singular 2-drop or just playing a singular 4-drop, if you want to look at that spectrum as well. Because you're basically, you have 3 attackers on the board versus the 1. And oftentimes the way the game is now, since the games are more compressed, they're, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, unless you're able to make the game go really long, going wide is going to be more impactful than going tall, because you're going to be able to, pressure the leader's life total with multiple attacks, or pressure the battle cards with multiple attacks, as opposed to just one singular attack for one battle card. And so the only reason why tall would ever be great is if it's something that wins you the game instantly or puts you in a very dominating board position or dominating game state. And so that means untapping with Universe 7 Beerus. So what that means, or when I say that, that means you got to swing with it once and then your opponent couldn't deal with it, so then you got to untap with it and swing with it again. The reason why that's so strong is because oftentimes that's, taking 2 to 4, if not more, cards out of your opponent's hand or off their field. It's very powerful, puts you in a dominating game state. Fu Shrouded in Mystery. When this card comes down, it effectively should be winning you the game. That's why it's so powerful. If you think about Awakened Power Son Goku, the Victory Strike, this is something, again, you're going tall. You're trying to delay the game to the point where you can play a threat that can win you the game instantly, and that's when you should be trying to play tall threats. But otherwise, going wide, if not, often, if not always, is going to be a way better strategy. The next thing to take into account is negates do matter. The reason why negates matter is because there's high-powered threats that make comboing difficult. So you have stuff that's coming in like, Oob comes down with Goku, and now he's a 20k crit attacker, and then say you activate Arena, now he's a 25k crit attacker. Comboing over that, your opponent's going to try and force the critical through, so using a negate more often than not is going to be better. So not only are negates better because the amount of high-powered threats that make comboing difficult, but also negates have the ability to deny tempo. Since blue is a highly played color, a lot of people are using Senzu Bean on Healing Spirit Trunks, and they're using blue leaders. Negates have the ability to deny them the tempo that they want, and that's often how you can kind of break up those, blue-yellow storm combo decks, is because of the fact that they'll get down to the point where they have their yellow tapped, and they only have one available attack left. And once you negate that attack, you're stopping them from being able to untap to go through a whole entire Goten cycle. So you're denying them tempo on that turn. So negates accomplish a lot of things in this format, and that's making sure you can kind of mitigate high-powered threats on a turn, and then the ability to deny tempo. Another thing you should note about negates, which negates will probably have their own portion in a different video where we talk about actual gameplay, is that negates in general just are something that are very important to the overall game itself because of what they provide. They allow you to, stop your opponent from killing you with something that you can't be, you won't be able to combo over. They allow you to, like I said, deny tempo. They allow you to extend the game additionally. They allow you to minus yourself against decks that try to pressure, that are gonna reduce your hand size anyway, like Cell Chain or Zeno. Negates are very versatile, and so they matter in this format. The next thing is viable leaders have to be able to access the things above. And when I say that, that means going wide and tall, being energy efficient, having access to Cell Chain or Chain Zeno, being leaders that add to their power and or the synergy of those different interactions. You want to make sure that you're playing a leader that does that. So if you're playing a leader that doesn't generate additional energy on a turn, so like something like Soul Striker, if you're playing a leader that doesn't untap to, when you're trying to do something really powerful, really important, if you don't have a leader that draws you extra cards, if you don't have a leader that generates tempo on its own, then you're going to end up having issues. So that's why, if you look at the leaders that I think are the most playable, you have Soul Striker, you have Announcer because he generates additional cards, you have Jackie Chun because he has access to Shugesh, something very powerful, and because on his backside, the leader not only draws you a card, but he trades for additional cards. World Martial Arts Tournament Green Goku does the same thing, trades for additional cards. Androids, they have access to Cell Chain. Mirahal has access to Cell Chain and Mirror Chain, and they can generate additional tempo because of overwhelm cards. Like it's like Hirudegarn is a card advantage leader, but also an untapped 2 leader, and then its Awakened side provides card advantage for you and disadvantage for the opponent. So all those leaders are really viable because of the fact that they have access to some of the most powerful things in the game, and they either add to their power or their synergy or both. So making sure when you're building your deck for the first time or trying to introduce yourself to getting an idea, make sure you're aware of the format. Make sure you're aware of the things that you can be doing or some of the best things you can be doing, and go from there. Alright, so the next thing we're going to go over is the color pie. So this is important right now, and the color pie can often shift, but this has kind of been the general theme of the game itself ever since the game started. Your number one, your best color is going to be blue. The reason why blue is your best color is because it's your best support color, has the best leaders in the game, and it has access to Senzu Bean, Unyielding Spirit Trunks, etc., like those cards. So it doesn't have the best battle cards, though, so that's something to take note of. But blue is the color that you're going to be able to splash the most because it has some of the best cards. Whis Coercion, Senzu Bean, all those cards are very strong. Objection, to allow you to energy ramp. You have access to all these powerful cards you get to play. Awe-inspiring Vegito only costs 1 blue. Like, blue is a really good splash color, a really good secondary color, and then, like I said, it has the best leaders in the game. So Soul Striker, you have Iron Vow Trunks, you have Trunks leader, Hirudegarn leader, Vegeta, you have Explosive Power Vegeta. The list goes on and on. You have new Krillin, who draws a ton of cards. All those things, right? Red. Red is your second best color and has the best battle cards. Hands down, red has the best battle cards out there. From, the effects that they generate, the tempo that they can generate, how energy efficient they are, and then just in general how good they are at attacking. Red in general just has the best battle cards hands down, and then it's a high powered and high synergy color. So you have stuff like the GT engine, Universe 6 engine, those engines alone are very, very powerful. So you just get to run all of those with high synergy because you have different cards that find one another, cards that combo together really well, but in general they also have a really high power level at the same time. So that's why red is your second best color. Green and yellow are tied for third and fourth. I personally put green over yellow because I think green has the second best battle cards, and I think green is a high synergy, medium power color. So you have stuff like Maidens in green, you have the Saiyans theme in green, these different themes that have synergy that work together. The World Martial Arts Tournament green theme is a very high synergy type of deck with medium power. So you get some things that are impactful, they're strong, but they're medium power level. The highest power level thing in green is droids because, Cell Chain is probably the best thing that you can do in the color, but overall, the overall power level of green is pretty low. Not low, but medium. Yellow is the second best support color because of access to stuff like Flying Nimbus, Crusher Ball, Master Roshi. Has access to Cold Bloodlust leaders if you value Cold Bloodlust and want to be able to, negate your opponent's skills. You have access to that. And then the high drops are very high powered. So you have stuff like, 4-drop Mecha Frieza Returning Terror, 4-drop Clan of Terror Mecha Frieza. You have the 7-drop Universe 7 Frieza. You have Clan of Terror Cooler. All the cards that once you get to 4, 5, 6, 7 energy in yellow are all really high powered. So this is kind of your color by breakdown. And this is what ends up happening to getting some of the most successful decks, right? So blue-red is a very popular combination. The reason why is because if you take red, you have the best battle cards. And you have their high-powered, high-synergy cards, and you combine it with blue, the best support color. So that's why Hirudegarn blue-red, Pan blue-red, all those decks are very strong. Soul Striker blue-red is even still going to be really strong because you combine those things. Green, green second best battle cards, high synergy, medium power. You can do green and blue is a good combination because of the fact that blue is a really support color, and green is a really dominant color. If you're playing green, you really kind of need to lean into green because those are going to be your best battle cards out there when you play the deck itself. And it's really kind of hard to mix green and red unless you're doing veggie specifically. But if you try and do green and red and you're trying to mix synergies of each color, it doesn't really happen or do well outside of veggies. And then additionally, just the cards don't really mesh or go well together unless you're doing something crazy like Cell Chain plus Foreseeing Hit, which you could do that. You could do green, red androids, but in general you don't really want to mix green and red. You could do green and yellow because again, yellow is a really good support color, so you could do that. It's not one of the main colors. And then yellow, you need to mix yellow with a high impact color. Yellow blue is a color combination only because of it. Bardock the Progenitor, Scrambling Assaults on Goten, Unyielding Spirit Trunks, and Senzu Bean, but yellow can be basically splashed with any of the other colors, and you can have a pretty solid deck. But again, that's how I kind of rank the colors, and so stuff that you can take into account when you're trying to build a deck or how you want to look at things is, you can kind of make your color combinations based on that, as opposed to, just doing monocolored. You can see the merits of splashing. Red blue is very strong, green blue is very strong, green yellow is very strong, red yellow is very strong. And just kind of go about it that way. So figure out your support colors, fill out your main colors, and then go from there. Next thing we'll go over is building the deck itself. So this is, of course, going to take up the majority of the video. But the first thing when you want to build a deck is, when you have awareness of the format, or you have awareness of, a strategy or an idea you want to try, you have to think about what are the goals of this deck. A lot of times people will just go in and they'll just start, jamming cards into a deck, and they don't really ever have a thought process behind it. So you need to make sure that you're setting goals for yourself. So, example here, low curve and high pressure to put pressure on chain attack Xeno decks and force them to deploy Xeno when they don't want to. So, in that idea there, so let's start thinking about the cards, or thinking about the strategies that do that, right? So, you have the Bardock and Goten swap decks, being able to put a lot of pressure on the opponent, make them take life, make them, take their life early enough to where they deploy a chain Zeno, it's kind of advantageous to them. Or Saiyan Kaba. Saiyan Kaba is really good at pressuring those decks, so maybe starting your curve with something like Saiyan Kaba, intensifying power trunks, like double strikers, early double strikers that put a lot of pressure on the opponent, that force them to take life, and kind of make chain Zeno disadvantageous, and you kind of compress the game itself. The next one is take advantage of the use of 1 through 3 drops and go wide with impactful threats. So people are playing a lot of stuff that are low curve right now. They're doing like 1-drop announcer, trading Blowstone Goku, like that kind of thing. So what happens if you do something like, you use the Goku combo, like you put those two down, you can mitigate 2 of your opponent's cards, and then now you're up on the exchange because you have impactful threats now. You have different things like that, but you need to take it, like start thinking about this stuff not just on like a high level for yourself, but more granular. Think about things specifically. Think about how you want to be able to make cell chain seem disadvantageous, so you want to play a deck that kind of focuses on having a low hand size. So what kind of decks facilitate that strategy? If we look at the red decks, you can be like hand size matter deck, and you can go really low on your hand size intentionally. You have mass Saiyan decks, they're decks that you can play without a hand, but in general, all those decks have a goal in mind. It's things that they want to accomplish. So when you want to build a deck, focus on what are the goals of the deck that you're trying to build, and what place it'll have in the format, because that's something that too many people kind of forget when they want to build their deck is they don't think about what place it's going to have in the format, or what it's going to be able to do when it's in the format. And they take it to an event, do poorly with it, and because it was something they didn't think about, or they didn't think about a particular matchup that was popular. But when you want to build your deck, you have to focus on what the goals of the deck are going to be. The next step is going to be finding the core. So the core of the deck is really just going to be starting with what are your auto includes. So your auto includes for most decks are going to be your super combos. They're going to be your your chosen negate that you want to go with. So if we're talking about blue, it's like 4 boost stack Piccolos, 4 Whis Coercion. What cards are the most important in letting you accomplish your goal? So if my goal is to play that low curve, high pressure deck, then it's like, okay, 4 Saiyan Kaba, 4 intensifying power trunks. Even if I want to play chain Zeno myself, it's like 4 chain attack trunks, 3 Zeno, and then we'll go into the ratios when we get to the consistency. But in general, like, you want to make sure that you're focusing on the cards that are the most important, letting you accomplish your goal. And they're cards that are, I'm going to hate to say it, but they're cards that have proven success. Like, you can go and you can look at deck lists across all of the tournaments, and you can see the cards that are played the absolute most. And a lot of times those are going to be the cards that you start with. Those are going to be the cards that are going to give you everything that you want to do, or the most information. And they're going to be able to cards that are going to fit your strategies more often than not, because a lot of the strategies in this game overlap. A lot of the ideas overlap because the card pool is still relatively short, like small, and because the power level of cards is very easily determined from just initial playtesting or just reading cards in their face. But in general, you want to focus on what cards are going to be the most important to letting you accomplish your goals. The next thing is going to be what cards are necessities based on the format. So what cards do you have to play? So if we talk about the popularity of blue decks, and we talk about the popularity of awe-inspiring Vegito, like, a necessity is that you have an answer for that card. If that card's going to be everywhere, then you need to make sure that you have slots dedicated to being able to prevent yourself to losing to that card, whether it be in your main deck or your sideboard. But in general, you need to make sure that you are thinking about that. What else are necessities? Think about the combo into play cards, right? So 8 Raging Spirits on Gohan. You know that defending your life total against the aggro decks or the low curve decks is really important. And the 10k combo cards that come into play are very good at doing that. So, jamming 4 Raging Spirits on Gohan is probably something that you really need to do in this format. So that's a necessity of the format. Think about cards if you're playing green already, and you think about how everyone's playing these 1, 2s, and 3s that are impactful. Well, so Sun Goten, Family of Justice, that's a card that is almost considered a necessity based on the format. Overwhelm cards, right? Scientist Fu, with the popularity of Chain Tag Zeno and, Perfect Force Cell, those are necessities based on the format. So those are cards that you consider a part of your core. A lot of times you're always going to have 2x Overwhelm slot as a part of the core of your deck, and so, that helps you kind of decide that. If removal is more important, maybe you do Dimensional Banisher Fu instead. But in general, you need to think about cards that are kind of necessary based on the format. That also includes things like, different negates. Mafuba, Flying Nimbus, Master Roshi. Free blockers are free blockers necessities of the format. And then so that, again, plays into you finding the core of your deck. So I'm playing X deck that has access to free blocker. Free blockers are good in this format. So that's now part of the core of my deck. But in general, your cores is going to be stuff that, allows you to accomplish everything you're trying to accomplish, and also being able to check a lot of the boxes that the format kind of asks of you. So make sure that you're doing that when you're trying to find the core of your deck. Keys to success. The number one key to success is consistency. This is really just trying to think of the amount of copies of a card that you're playing in your deck. So you have 1, 2, 3, or 4 copies. So the first one is, what cards do you need to see and want to play in multiple? So this is a card that you want to see at all times, whether it be early game, mid game, late game, and you want to be able to play it multiple times. So this is, stuff like your super combo, right? You're always going to play 4 of your super combo, so you need to see your super combo. This is your bridge piece. So say you're playing Mercenary Tau and TN, you need to see the TN, so you play 4 TN. Also think about your momentum generators, which I'll talk about momentum in a second. A lot of times you play 4 energy boosted Majin Buu because of what he does. He cantrips into another card, finds you something else. So it's your cards that you play 4 copies of cards that you need to see and you want to play in multiples. Your cards that you play 3 copies of are basically, what cards do you want, and you want to reduce diminishing returns of drawing multiples. So let's say you're playing Vegeta Princess Speed, or you're playing Universe 7 Beerus, right? You don't need that card. You want that card, and you want to see that card across the course of the game, but drawing 2, especially in the early stages of the game, is pretty bad. So you want to play 3 copies of that card because you don't want to see it all the time. You don't need to see it, but you do want to see it across the course of the game, and you really want to reduce the chance of drawing multiples. And you kind of want to mitigate the fact that having your life set up as a separate entity is a thing. So it's you have 8 cards that you don't know what they are, and so you want to make sure that you have plenty of copies that you're going to be able to see the card that you want. Next thing is, what cards are situational but useful, or for the late game. So something like Mafuba is situational, but it's useful because you have a card like Vegito, like I said, which has very limited answers. So Mafuba is situational, but it's very useful. Or in general, it can kind of focus on threats that you're really afraid of or can't take care of right away. Again, it's very situational, but it's useful. Sun Goten, Family of Justice, is very situational, but it's useful. Stuff that's for the late game. Your Dragon Fist SS3 Son Goku, your Saiyan Onslaught Kefla, those are cards that you want to see, but you really want to see them towards the later part of the game. You want to reduce your chances of drawing them early and mid game, so you want to play 2 copies of it. And then, what are cards that are situational but narrow, or able to be tutored? So a card like Assassination Plot is super situational. It's also really narrow because it's really only good in one particular time. Or running a singular copy of Fu Shrouded Mystery in your deck when you know that your deck goes really long. It's situational because it's it requires you to have a board state. It's also narrow because it's your one game-winning card if you draw it in that one situation, or something that's able to be tutored. So if you have access to Planet Vegeta, Successor, or Hope to find the 1 copy of something, playing 1 copy is never a bad idea. But in general, think about these rules when you're looking of you've built the core of your deck. You know what you want to see in 4s. Now it's thinking about the 3s, 2s, and 1s. The 3s, 2s, and 1s is oftentimes where you see a lot of the really good deck builders kind of separate themselves, because they can kind of dictate, what cards that they, want, or what cards are useful, or what cards are too narrow. In general, they usually pick that based on what the format kind of dictates. The next thing is looking at power versus synergy. So is your deck based on building towards a set of cards that work together? So this is, again, think of it like the World Martial Arts Tournament announcer deck, right? So it's like, is your card based on, using Goku and Oob to stifle in the mid game, and then making sure that you get to 5 energy so you can play your Supreme Showdown Goku and Vegeta. So it's like all this stuff is like you have to play these small announcer cards that allow you to get through your deck and to find your threats, and then to play your Goku and Oob to make sure you stifle the opponent, and then finally get to your late game. Or is your deck a number of high-powered cards that work independently? So think about something like Universe 7 Frieza decks, how they have like the Universe 7 Frieza engine, and then they also have the Victory Strike engine in the same deck. Those are two independently like high-powered threats that happen to go into the same deck locally because they both have the Universe 7 tag. So that also could almost fall into like the both category. Or just in general, just like decks that are like mono blue Soul Striker, right? So they play Beerus 4-drop, Piccolo 4-drop. They play Vegeta Princess Speed, Dragon Fist. Like, they play all these really high-powered cards. They're not really synergy-based. They're just really good cards. If you look at, like, the big red decks play stuff like Foreseeing Hit, Saiyan Onslaught, Kefla. There's no real synergy in those decks. They're just a lot of high-powered cards that all work independently that all just go into the same deck. Or is your deck like saying doing both? So maybe almost similar to like the Universe 7 Frieza example that I just gave a second ago when I was talking about high-powered cards working, independently. Like Universe 7 Frieza kind of does a little bit of both in that respect. But in general, like making sure that your deck is either balancing power and synergy, or if you're doing one or the other, making sure you're aware of it, or making sure that if you have those synergy pieces that you can put into your deck to kind of make those high-powered cards better, that you're trying to do that. If you can balance synergy and power perfectly, a lot of times you're going to find your deck being really successful within any given format, because your deck is gonna add to your deck's consistency and just add to the power level of your deck when you're able to add in synergy with your high-powered cards. But in general, you can do both. You can do either or. You can just do one. But either way, this is something you should think about when you're building your decks. Momentum. So momentum is a term that I like to use when it's like, do you have cards that allow you to get through your deck and find the cards you need? So this is a card like Announcer Ever Curious, Energy Boosted Majin Buu, Saiyan Teamwork Kaba, they're ready to fight Son Goku. Anything that's like looking at additional cards or getting through your deck for you, or just helping you just kind of just filter out things, those are cards that provide momentum. Like the reason why, Scrambling Assault Son Goten is good because he's a card that himself provides momentum, but at the same time, he also helps forward your game plan of trying to be a low curve aggressive deck. But in general, like, you need to think about the stuff when you're building your deck is, do I have cards that get me to the next card or get me to the next drop on the curve? So say for instance, you're playing World Martial Arts Tournament Green Goku, right? If turn 1 your play is Announcer Ever Curious, right? You look at the top 7, you can either find your next drop, so if it's a 2-drop, or you can find your 3-drop TN that you need to see. But in general, you need to have cards that allow you to find those extra cards in your deck or get through your deck. As the reason why for the longest time Energy Boosted Majin Buu was probably considered the best card in the game, back in set 1, because when you played it, you drew a card, and that was really good. 1 energy, draw a card, you have a body on the field, and it got you to the next card. It got you to see the next card. That's why Bundle of Curiosity was so good in set 2. It was basically a 2-costed energy-boosted Majin Buu. And again, they were just cards that were momentum. They were cards that replaced themselves and allowed you to find the next piece of what you needed. So making sure when you're building a deck, not only do you have your power, your synergy, your consistency, but you have cards that help you get through your 50 card, your full 50 card deck. The last thing you're going to be looking at when you're building a deck is your technology. So your technology is stuff that's going to be addressing the format or addressing key things in the format that you are aware of. Like I said, you talked about earlier about stuff that, are, let's say Mufuba is really good right now, or let's say an Assassination Plot's really good right now, or, your technology is just going to be like those last few slots that you have that can kind of, swing different matchups in your favor based on their existence. So it's like, say you're playing against a low curve aggressive deck and you're playing green, Android 16, like, that's a piece of technology that you can play in your deck based on what's really popular in the format. But in general, technology is something in your deck that you need to make sure you have space for. You can have your core of your deck, you can have all these pieces, you can have the momentum, the power, the synergy, the consistency, but the true mark of a great deck is the technology. It's those little things that you do that improve certain matchups that you expect throughout the course of the day. So in general, I really do like to have tech in my deck. Like that's like, that's probably one of the things. Like I always have some sort of piece of technology, whether it's in 1 or 2, but it's something because I'm really hyper aware of what's going on in the format. So even if, like, say, take an example of like the blue-yellow decks I make. all of them run 2 copies of Mafuba in the main deck. And the reason why is because, number one, it's a blue energy source, which is important. You need to have access to blue. And then number two, the deck loses 2 Vegito or loses 2 Bergamo. So you need to have access to Mafuba to make sure you don't lose to those cards. Make sense? So, again, technology, very important. So these are some things to think about when you are building your deck or building your first deck or you're brewing or you're tuning or you're net decking and want to just like, shift things around a bit. This is stuff that you should really focus on. A really good thing that I like to do or recommend people do is look at decks that win, right? And just see what they do. Like, look at their main deck and look and see, what copies that they're playing or why they're playing a certain copy, or, try and apply these principles to see, if this stuff lines up to that, or, see if they check those boxes, or just see where they can improve based off of where you think the format's going to go. But in general, like, this is kind of just like a high level overview of things that you should do when you're trying to build your own deck. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go through building a deck itself. And so I'm actually going to be going through building Mono Blue Soul Striker and just trying to think about the format itself at hand and things that I think could be really powerful, right? So we start with our leader, which of course is Super Saiyan Godson Goku. And the reason why we want to start with Soul Striker is because he's a leader that enables us to do those things we talked about. So he provides extra tempo because he untaps energy. He gets access to, Sensu Bean if we stay in blue colors. He can play on Yielding Spirit Trunks if you want to. And he is Awakening, very strong. He draws 2 cards, which I think is very good in this format right now with the existence of Cell Chain and Chain Zeno, because if you can live long enough, you don't have to worry about it. And then also when he swings, he becomes 20k on the backside, right? So when we think about Mono Blue, we have to look at our auto includes. And our auto includes right now are 4 Sensu Beans. We have our negate of choice, which will be Waste Coercion. We have our super combos, which are super combos you can kind of, you can decide based on the format itself how good certain things are. I think since the format slows down, I think you can go back to Boost Attack Piccolo and be happy. So we will go back to Boost Attack Piccolo. And then now we think about stuff that's really good in the format, right? So in testing, I found that Cell Chain is, number one, Cell Chain is very strong, but at the same time, it does have a weakness to the very powerful threat that is Beerus of Universe 7. So if you can play a deck that can kind of, whether power out a Universe 7 Beerus early, against Cell Chain, you're going to be able to take advantage of them, because a lot of times they have to charge their cell pieces when they draw them earlier, so like their 5 and their 7 drop. And you're going to be able to often either force them to take from their energy, or, since they have it represented on their board, they're going to have to do from their hand, which is something that's very strong. So this deck is going to be aware of that. So what are some things that we can do that are synergy based that allow that to happen, or allow us to power that out, out earlier than, later? So let's take a look. If we're building the deck around Beerus of Universe 7, he's a 5-drop. So Divine Vanquisher is a card that we want to see. Do we need to see it? No. But when we play against the Androids matchup, we consider siding a 4th copy based on how much we need to see it. But in general, this is the key card of the deck, but it's a 5-drop. 5-drops are something that are pretty expensive, so you just want to see them, and they're not something you need to see. The next thing is going to be thinking about, if we're going to be playing ones, what are the 1-drops that we're going to be looking to play? And the first one that comes to my mind is, since you don't want to play Results of Training because Results of Training is too slow, we need to make sure that we have a way to awaken. And I think that Awakening Talonpan in Mono Blue Soul Striker is the best way to do that, because it's a resilient card. The only thing that's going to be able to kill it in the early game is full power energy. Otherwise, it just stays in your hand. You can keep recurring it, and kind of plays into that card advantage builder that you want with Soul Striker. An Awakening Talonpan, so this is a card that you need to see, because it's going to be the card that allows you to awaken earlier. You're going to want to play 4 copies of this card. So the next thing to think about is, since we're playing Beerus, Divine Vanquisher is kind of like the card in the deck. What are some things that we can do to add synergy to the deck, but at the same time increase the power level of our deck? And so the first thing that kind of comes to mind is the Whis from Tournament of Power that reduces the cost of Beerus. And the main reason why is because that card is just, it does exactly what we want. It allows us to basically play the Beerus Universe 7 on turn 4. So whether if it's post Cell Chain or say we've managed our hand size enough to where we've reduced the impact of Cell Chain, you now can play Whis on 3, swing with your leader, untap an energy, so you can defend yourself with like a Bean, which is a -1 to yourself, or a Whis Coercion, which is a -1 to yourself, and then the next turn you can follow up with Beerus Divine Vanquisher to really punish them. So I think we want to play Whis Mentor at Beerus. But this card, so what's pretty interesting about this card is that this card, number one, has barrier, but it has a permanent where you can only have one copy in play. So you really only need to play one copy. So this is a card that I think we can go down to 2. And with this, the idea behind going down to 2 is that I actually think that since we do that, we can actually play a card that can tutor it. So we can play 4 Bulma God Tempter. This is a 1-drop. You can play it early, right? And it's a card that you do need to see because it's a card that allows you to kind of help you, facilitate your engine, and at the same time helps thin out your deck. But we do need to play extra Whis. And so playing this idea of getting to our high drops, I think that we can maybe test out at first Whis, the Resting Attendant, based on what's going to be able to do for this deck. So we'll play that 2 copies as well. You could go down to 1 based on the fact that, you're tutoring with Bulma, but I like always being able to hit on Bulma, and so, hit on Bulma, funny. So we're going to do a 2-2 split for our Whis. So we have our Awakening card, we have Impactful 1-drop, we have our core, so 4 Sensu, not our core, but we have our auto includes 4 Sensu Bean, 4 Whis Coercion, 4 Boost Attack Piccolo. We have the card that we're kind of looking at as like a pseudo win condition in Beerus Divine Vanquisher Universe 7. We have 2 Whis Resting Attendant, 2 Whis Mentor Beerus. So now let's think about some things that are really strong in this format. So removal is back, and I think removal is starting to become really popular. So I think we need some resilient threats. And when I say resilient, I mean threats that are kind of like they get to ignore removal, and they get to kind of just avoid a lot of the different things that are existent in the format, or stuff that like it forces your opponent to redirect their attacks at that card as opposed to your leader. And so I think that card that actually works really well with that and kind of accomplishes the theme of the deck and taking away resources is Sneak Attack Vegeta. So this is a 3-drop, 0-5K. We do want to see it more often than not, and I think it merits playing a full 4 copies because of the fact that it's a 3-drop. 0-5K combo, there's no downside to playing this in multiples, and I do want to draw multiple across the course of the game, especially because of the way Soul Striker can manipulate their energy. So we can play 4 Sneak Attack Vegeta. So we have 4 of those. And so, interestingly enough, if we start to look at 4 Sneak Attack Vegeta, right, what are some other things that we can do? We're already in Mono Blue, but what is something that is kind of synergy based, but then will allow us to kind of recover out of some tough spots or tough situations? So, thinking about staying on theme or thinking about the format itself, and you have Zeno and you have, Cell Chain, you need ways to recover, and at the same time you need cards that kind of help you pour it on. And just previous experience, I've always had a really good success in Mono Blue decks playing Prince of Speed out of those situations. And so since you do want to see the Prince of Speed when you're coming out of those situations, I think 3 copies is the appropriate number based on this deck's configuration. So we're going to go with 3. Okay. So now we have 34 cards. We're playing a lot of really good cards here. I'm kind of liking the way this is shaping up. So let's think about some other things right now. The aggro decks are mostly blue based, right? And what's something that happened recently that kind of gets in the way of those decks? The reduction of Flute. The reduction of Flute's pretty big because the reduction of Flute just makes cards like Yajirobe better. Injury 16 got better because they can't remove them, so they need hard removal for those threats. So I think Yajirobe stays on theme with this deck because if we're looking to, we don't even have a 2-drop as is, but we're looking to basically go into a later game or kind of stall the game out. So I think Yajirobe actually has a home here. So we can play 4 Yajirobe. Okay, so we're at 38 cards now. 4. Oh. It seems kind of like the necessary evil. And we're playing a leader that gets to untap energy on their turn, so I think it kind of makes sense to increase our defensive tempo. So we should probably be running Unbreakable so we actually have the full 8 super combos in the deck. I mean, there's no reason not to. I mean, not doing it just seems like we're kind of doing ourselves a disservice. So we're at 42. Staying on theme, since we have the Wee's Mentor Beers to reduce costs, and we do want to actually have access to removal in the deck, we can kind of look at having some removal options. So if we stay on theme, we can actually just play Beerus's. And I think what's really good right now would actually be Energy Boost Beerus, because of the ability to just kill anything. So after our opponent cell chains us, we do have an answer to that threat right away. So we can actually go with 2 Energy Boosted Beerus. Because the card is pretty situational, but it is very useful, and you basically want it when you want it, and you don't want it any other time. So I don't think we need to invest too many copies. So we got 4 beers. Next thing to think about is our Overrealm. So I think if we're trying to be hyper aware of the format, if we're really concerned about those decks that are going to cause us to not be able to catch up, I think, you know, we're kind of limited to 2 sort of solutions, right? We already have some main deck removal and Energy Boost Beers, but we don't have access to, you know, too many catch-up cards. Like we have Princess Bead, and that's really it. So I think Scientist Fu is a really good choice for us. The only other choice, I think, is Fu Shrouded Mystery, because this deck does look to be going late game. So I think it's just kind of just a preference at that point of how you want to play it. So me, I kind of like the ability to have the recovery option against Chain Attack Zeno, but at the same time, I like that how having access to Scientist Fu plays into the untapping of energy, because it's like you can play a threat, play a second threat, swing Soul Striker, untap 2, play a Scientist Fu. So we'll go with Scientist Fu here. I think it's a high-powered card and kind of has synergy with what our deck wants to do. Alright, so we're at 4 Unbreakables, 4 Awakening Talipan, 4 Bulma God Tempter, 4 Beans, 4 Coercions, 4 Boost for Yajirobe, 4 Sneak Attack, 2 Wee's Mentor, 2 Energy Boost Beerus, 2 Wee's Resting Attendant, 3 Beerus, Divine Vanquisher, 3 Princess Speed. Alright, so we have 4 slots left. So we really could take the deck and we could make it, if we want to go more defensive, we have the option to play something like Raging Spirit Sun Gohan. I think that that's still kind of a staple of the format and plays into the leader being able to untap energy at the end of turn. So I think I honestly think that that's just the best choice for the slot right now. I mean, I can't think of anything on top of my head. Let me think about more synergy. I mean, we could play Beerus Essence of Destruction, but I think that Beerus Essence is more so of like a cyborg card. It's super situational. We can play Awe-Inspiring Vegito, but it's not a card we need. It's more of a card we want. So I think we can play 3 copies. So it puts us at 49. So our choices now is to kind of reduce some ratios to play something that we maybe want to add in, like Raging Spirits and Gohan. But in general, otherwise, we can kind of flesh out something or add an additional copy of a different card. And figure out if you want to test from there. Maybe we go with like a super narrow card. Maybe we do it. 1-drops are popular right now. We'll go with Essence of Destruction. So now, this deck kind of covers all the bases that we were talking about, right? We're playing, you know, our 4-ofs because they're the cards that we need to see. We're playing our cards that we want to see in our 3-ofs. We have cards that are situational, and we have cards that are super narrow. So this card kind of checks all those boxes that we were talking about. And then now, we have to go through the testing process. And so the testing process is something I'll be going over the next video. For sure. In general, though, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's a bit long-winded. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll probably be dividing this into 2 parts. Anyways, thank you guys again so much for everything. I hope you enjoyed this. Next video will be going over playtesting your deck and shaping it for the format and also gameplay. So, in general, thank you again for the support. Thank you so much for the Patreon. You guys are absolutely incredible. Bye!